Hey everyone's Classic DM, and we're going to do another DM's tour, this time for the Hidden Shrine of Tamoachan, one of my all-time favorite modules, which was originally designed as a tournament module way back in like 1979. It was reissued a couple of times. The goal of this, just like with our Tomb of Horrors video and with our White Plume Mountain video, is to go room by room and walk you through what the setup of the dungeon is and read the actual descriptions verbatim to you and then discuss them real briefly. And then you can create that kind of back and forth between, hey, this is how I want to run this room. This is how I interpret this. This is how I interpret that, etc. I decided not to do any background music for this to keep it kind of clean and simple and right to the point. I did a video, 2 videos, a number of years ago, 5 years ago, and you should go back and check those. I'll put either a little banner marker or I'll put a link in the description and that says where to find those. Those videos really talk about the characters, the pre-generated characters, where they are in the world. I mean, everyone knows this takes place pretty much in the Medio jungle. It explains all that. It goes through the Greyhawk information and the lore. So if you like the lore and if you really like the history behind the world of Greyhawk and how this module came to be and the details behind the 3 characters, the pre-generated characters, that's really fantastic. Go check that video out. It still holds up today. It's not too bad. It's about an hour long, so it's very worthwhile watching. What we're going to do instead here is we're going to go ahead and jump to the actual description of the very first area and the setup of the module and walk you through this while also looking at the map and talking about some details related to that. Let's get rid of this and we'll pop this map up. This is a map that was made in 1980. The original monochrome map made in 78, 79 is uses one square equals 5 feet. This uses 1 square equals 10 feet. It doesn't make any difference. Everything's still exactly the same size. We don't have a really awesome John Pentar map of this. Usually, like in the Tomb of Horrors and White Plume Mountain, I like to use his maps because they're so beautifully done. We're just going to make do with this map here, and we're going to begin everything off with this lower area right down here, with north is to the left, okay? Usually when you make a map, architecturally, Google Maps, anything else, north is always to the top. But because this layout is so wide, north is actually stretched this way. Real briefly, before we go into too much detail, obviously it's a pyramid. Everyone here watching this video knows about the Shrine of Tamoachan. You're here for nostalgia. You think about running it again. You can see right away there's a series of tiers. The way the campaign map begins and the way the tournament map begins is the players, falling into the tomb with a cave-in, kind of like a sinkhole or something on those lines. Usually down here, if you can see my cursor move around and kind of in the middle of the screen, this little hand down here, and you work your way through everything upward, right? Upward through these different tiers of the entire dungeon. With this part here being a map of what's on the top, and then you have a first tier, second tier, and third tier. So this one all-encompassing landscape map is showing these tiers stacked on top of each other. It isn't one, and there's slopes. As you can see, there's sloping passageways that make it ramp up and things like that. So let's go ahead now and jump into the actual module stuff and start talking about, hey, how does it, what's the deal, what's the setup? Let me make this size a little bit bigger so you can actually see it if you're watching this on your phone or something like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to, let's put this on fit to the width. And then we'll be able to make this a single page view, which makes it much easier to see. It'll be really large. All right, so I'm not going to read everything, but I will read the things that are important to you as a DM. Right off the bat, it's a tournament dungeon with a scoring system. You're not going to be running it that way, right? You're going to be running it as part of a campaign with whoever you have playing with you, which could be like your grandchildren, your children, your friends, whatever, 3 people, 1 person playing multiple characters. The tournament background is fun. You could use it to a certain degree, but modern day players are very good at outsmarting linear setups. And this is kind of a linear setup for the module where, the thief character is in trouble and the 2 other companion characters, the cleric and the fighter, help them out. And, Ryal, Amira, and Care are their name. And there's bad guys running through the woods chasing you who chartered a boat. Everyone knows that, like in reality, you turn around and fight them. So skip all that. Have the players come to the location for whatever reason. You let them use their own characters because it says in here, right, the number is 5 to 7. I'm going to use the highlighting tool here a little bit, right? So originally designed for tournament play, this is what you want to start thinking about, right? It's a test of skill and common sense for players. Yes, there's lots of tricks and traps in it. It's kind of like the Tomb of Horrors, but not as brutal. It's more like that Indiana Jones type of vibe, which historically, Indiana Jones came out after this, okay? 5 to 7 characters, 3rd to 7th level. Now, we all know that in AD&D, a third level character, a third level magic user, on average, has 6 hit points. If you have 2 hit points per level and with no good constitution, a level 3 to level 7, I always like to err on the side of a little bit higher level. I would rather the players be protected from failure by having more hit points, and then have them use their resourcefulness and their armor class and the gear and the stuff that they get to be able to survive. 7 characters, right? In a modern world, you might have one person playing 2 characters, someone else is playing 1, and someone else is playing 3 or 4 characters. So with 2 to 3 players, you could probably handle this quite well, right? The average level of the party should be 5th. So you're not talking about any 8th, 9th, and 10th level, but that 5 to 7 range is you're starting to come into your own. You're getting very resourceful. That's a really good thing to you. Obviously, you need to read the module completely before you go through it. There are pictures and illustrations. One of the things that's very famous about this module is it has lots of pictures from Darlene and Jeff D., Errol Otis, and David Sutherland, I believe how you pronounce his name. There's a bunch of people that draw and images in here, and they're really good. There's like 14 of them. I've got them compiled into a PDF. We can look at them as we get to them. There is a theme in the dungeon of poison gas being everywhere. And in the tournament, you're having to go as far as you can and scoring points for doing things that you don't know about, and it hopes that you can survive before the poison gas runs out. And so therefore, for their 2-hour tournament thing they did, it's not intended to run the whole dungeon. You're going to be running this as a campaign. I actually think you should just dump the whole poison gas thing. You could leave it as a noxious fume that stinks, like old tomb gas, because it affects lighting. So one thing that's very interesting is there's the structure is like, stone structures with stone tiered, fake cobbled type of archways, not barrel vaults like you see in Roman architecture, Greek architecture. It's much more rudimentary, like you see of a Maya temple or something even in the Inca area or in Mesoamerica. But the lighting thing is really interesting. So if you have a torch, you can only see about 10 feet around you. The light spell will work fine. So if someone casts light, which most people have, they'll be okay. But if they're trying to use torches, it's going to be kind of this weird reddish glow. I like that. I think that's interesting. I think you could also do some other things that they talk about where if you're casting a fireball and stuff like that, the gases might ignite, might cause problems. I really like that idea. I think that's really fine. Let's enable scrolling and go down here. So they talk about that here in this section right here. What casting a fireball or a lightning bolt will cause damage to everyone around the area. These are really neat things. They don't make it not fun. But the whole section down here where you talk about the poisons and stuff like that, that gets pretty nasty pretty quick. This is the part down here where I was mentioning about, any light source caused by fire will have an effective range of only 10 feet. That's really, 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 really short because it's not going to be super bright in the middle and then super bright on the edges. It's going to have a gradient and taper off. Being able to see 10 feet in front of you is not very far. Let me give you an example. If you're standing at the free throw line and you're shooting a basketball goal that's 15 feet. So you're talking about 5 feet shorter, all right? There are discussion here about what to do with people that want to try to vent the gas out of the whole dungeon. You might want to read that and think about that. I think what I would do personally is leave this, tomb stink film gaseous stuff anywhere. If someone tries to, leave an opening for the tomb to gas out, it just doesn't go out. For whatever reason, it doesn't flow properly. Just ignore that. I've run this dungeon, I think, about 7 or 8 times over the course of my life, like last 40 years or so, even longer than that, 45 years of playing D&D when I was a teenager, and no one ever tried to do this. And we always change the poison gas to be like it's poisonous, and you make a saving throw maybe once every 5 turns, every hour or something like that. So anyway, there is discussion about potions that are found that are, dried up, and if you add wine or water to them, they'd be turned into a partially effective version of the potion or potion of delusion. That's not very, you could use that if you want to. A lot of the really, really old D&D modules have this, like you come into, even in Search of the Unknown, you come into some laboratory and there's all these beakers and vials of stuff everywhere and someone can mess with them and try to drink a potion. And it's kind of crazy and scary, but no one does that in the real world. So modern day players are not going to be like, let me just try drinking random potions and see what happens. So you may find that this doesn't make a lot of sense. All right. So, and because of the rough footing and the rough architecture, it allows a 50% chance for people to be successfully climbing, or a 50% chance to fall if you're trying to scramble up the side of a chamber. In the tournament play, it's like get out before everyone dies, but that isn't really going to be the place for you. Instead, let them the players have the time to explore the entire tomb. I don't have a problem with them crawling back out the way that they came in from where the cave-in kind of happens in Area 1. I don't like the idea of them going to the top of the pyramid and then working their way down. I think it's much better to start at the bottom and work your way upward. Let's pull that map up again so you can see what I'm talking about. So it's much better to have them start down here in area 1 where it says start. Remember, north is to the left, and have them work through everything that's designed pretty much for you to come from that direction. There are a few dead ends and cave-ins and stuff like that along the way, but it's really creative for you to flow through it this way and then work your way up and then come up to the top, right? So some of the more difficult and terrifying areas are like level 42, level 41, and level 45, not level 1 and level 7. So working down reverse doesn't make a lot of sense. So I really encourage you to run it that way. All right, let's get into the details here. I know we have a lot of preamble. I have a tendency to do that. Let me just jump right into one of the first few areas. We'll see how many areas we get through. I did a video years ago that covers this room in fantastic detail. I'm not going to do as much with that one, but I will do detail with the adjacent rooms from that point forward. I'm not going to draw any stuff on the marker board, right? There is obviously in all the D&D adventures, wandering monsters, a 1 in 12 chance every turn. Remember, in AD&D, a turn is every 10 minutes. So if people are moving slowly through passageway and checking things, their time system is very stretched out. Movement rates are very slow. So if you change movement rates, expand the time. I always try to make the wandering monster checks happen when things are at a lull or when players are trying to camp somewhere for like 3 or 4 hours, right? I don't like to check it every 10 minutes because most people don't dick around in the dungeons. They move to the next room. They move to the next room. They want to clear. They want to see the next new exciting thing. They don't like take 10 minutes to explore a whole hallway, but it depends how hardcore your original game is, right? And it talks about rats doing surprise and bats and zombies. Those details there, if you are a hardcore rules is written wandering monster person, there's some pretty basic ones in here. The Willibus is kind of nasty, but hey, it's up to you. All right, let's talk about this first area. Now, before we look at it, let's kind of zoom in. Now, our map is not going to be great here, right? This low quality map, and we're looking down here in the lower right-hand corner, right? So this area here is where like there's been a cave in, and you can maybe scramble and climb your way up. Maybe there's a small little hole. One person at a time can climb out like a cave. In this room, okay, there's these 6 niches labeled A, B, C, D, E, and F. And in the center is this little sunken pit with a half dome kind of covering it that has a diorama in it. This room is the room that has all the clay figures and the diorama and the lore and the story. It's beautiful. It's a wonderful room. And the door here can't be opened. Let's go back and see how that's originally written out. And I'll switch back and forth between the two for you. So for tournament use, this is like as if you're watching a movie where the barbarian's basically informing the rest of the party that, hey, this is a poison, Ryle the barbarian sits quietly, nose raised, sniffing carefully. After a moment, his fear is confirmed. He informs the other two, the air in this place is bad, poisonous. You can almost see Arnold Schwarzenegger doing the line. So you're not doing that, right? So you're going to start right here. The very first thing, right? You've got your players here. Here's the deal. You're in a long, narrow chamber running east to west. In the center of the apartment or room is a dome shape on the floor. In the east wall is a blank-faced stone door, and the west end of the room is blocked by fallen stone and rubble, apparently the result of the collapse, which is the way you came in. The 2 side walls appear to have several niches cut into them. The shape in the center of the chamber appears to be a small alcove. Now, it's not an alcove like you go put a coat in a restaurant or something like that. Protected by a half dome with an open end facing towards the door of the east wall. This alcove is set in a recessed, shallow, tiled well. So think of like a fountain in Italy that doesn't have any water anymore with no centerpiece in the fountain, and it's about 1 foot deep. It's 10 feet wide. That's the radius times 2, right? So it's 10 feet. It's 5 feet in diameter, so it's a circle. It's about 1 foot deep, so it's like a kiddie pool size, but it's got tiles on it, right? Now, it has this partial dome, half cover over it, like you might see in a telescope observatory when like the doors are open or something. It only covers half of it, and the opening is facing the door. So if you look at the map here real quick, you see this, like the black part would be where you could look in, and the covered part's like a roof, like a dome, like you might have for astrology. And that makes a lot of sense if you think about how these ancient cultures work, because all this stuff is based on Mayan and Mesoamerican culture. They call it the Olman, even though there was a civilization in the real world called the Olmec. So you can do your own personal research and capture the theme of that stuff. One thing I like to do when I ran this one time in Pathfinder just for my wife. And what I did is I got a bunch of great Mesoamerican hieroglyphs and petroglyphs and stelas and stuff. And I got those images and painted the whole wall with them so she could really get in because she's an archaeology person. So The next thing you have, so the opening is here and the door is here and the door won't be opened. You have A, B, C, D, E, and F. So remember, it's pitch black dark. You've got this lighting problem where you can only see 10 feet away from you. If you have any kind of fire-based lighting source, it's going to be like a sputtering red flame, right? The color of the orange flame mixed with the weird tomb gases or whatever makes this really kind of creepy. You might even want to make those gases feel kind of magical. So let's talk about these A, B, C, D, E, and F. And if you've played this before, if you're on this channel, you know kind of what goes on. But here's the DM information for you. Let's go down to here. Okay. Sorry, I didn't finish reading this, right? In the display appears to be a diorama depicting a hunting party of Ulman warriors in feathers and deer hide garments in a mountainside scene. Some have successfully pulled down a stag with the aid of a dog. Yay, I love dogs. Another group is cleaning a small mule deer, and the last party has cornered a puma with their spears. A scout watches the puma hunt from an outcropping above. He holds a metal staff with a loop in its end. It looks to be a shepherd's crook. So this is the whole thing. The staff, the shepherd's crook that's in the little model, okay, of a, what does it say exactly here? A scout. So the staff is the key that can be separated from the figure without affecting it. In tournament play, this key is used to open the door in the room. In campaign adventure, the key can be used to work a lock on the top of the mountain, which allows the well to be opened. Now they're calling it a well. Remember, remember I said it was like a fountain? This could be used to provide access to lower levels, which the DM could create his or her himself. So they're basically giving you an option that you don't need to do. Like, unless you want to make it where the little diorama that you can do something with the crook and open up an area and the diorama slides that away and there's a secret passage and it goes down to a new area, right? You could do that. So there are 3 5-foot wide niches on each side, on both the north and the south walls, about 3 feet above the floor. Remember, 3 feet is about the height of a countertop in your kitchen, 36 inches above the ground, okay? So if you're in your kitchen, you think about your countertop, that's the beginning of the niche. So you like set something in it. Now the niches go up a certain distance, but it's not really discussed. Each niche contains a diorama depicting some aspect of tribal life. The 6-inch high figures, right? A 6-inch high figure is like half the size of a classic G.I. Joe from 1970, okay? So this is like an action figure size character. And all the display appear to be made of stucco, realistically and brightly painted, probably clay or terracotta. The scenes portrayed represent, you don't make a figure out of stucco. Stucco is a finish you put on stuff. It's like plaster. But they would be plaster looking, realistically and brightly painted. So they're not covered with dust or anything. That might be something detail you want to add. These figures are covered with what, like the little cobwebs and dust on top of it. I think you can add a little bit more here to make it even more creepy and scary. They represent fishing, farming, religion, warfare, the creation story, and crafts. This is wonderful. It's so cool to see some humanities involved in the a D&D adventure. There's one thing about this adventure I just love. It's just not so goofy, fantastical like the Queen of the Demon Web pits or whatever. So if any of the human or animal figures are removed and placed on the floor of this vault, meaning the room, they will grow to living dimensions immediately, 2 segments, which is 12 seconds. In the classic rules, a segment is 6 seconds, not a melee round back then. Immediately, and spirits of the ancestor will animate the creature, and it will attack items taken. From this room will remain painted stucco statues. The statistics for animated figures are given below. So this is kind of tricky because this one key phrase, and I'm such a nitpicker because I write all the time. Placed on the floor. Picked up is good enough. I think to make this exciting, if someone picks up the figure, they can feel it grow and twist, and it leaps out of their hand, lands on the ground, and grows to full size. It goes, oh crap! And anyone who's played it before that knows it's going to happen, don't let them spoil it for people who've never experienced that. So here's all the statistics for what you might see from the different scenes. We'll go through the different scenes in a few minutes. They're pretty low AC, like AC 10, AC 9, AC 7, and they have like hit dice 2 and 3 and 0 and 3 hit points. But it's kind of cool, and it kind of makes things feel like mystical, and which is part of the fun. Not knowing what's going to happen, not knowing why this would happen, doesn't make any sense. All the other animals like sheep and stuff like that might be in the background are benign. All right, so now we're going to go through each alcove, A, B, and C, which is on the north wall. Okay, let's go take a look and see what it says there. The first alcove contains a river scene. Ulman men, women, and children are busy gathering rushes, fishing with nets, and carving a dugout. So in that situation, the men and the women and the children could possibly turn into live figures if you touch one of them or pick them up. I kind of like the idea is if you lift them out of the diorama, not just touch it with your finger, right? Someone could touch it with a dagger, nothing would happen. Someone would touch it with their glove, melee glove, nothing would happen, male glove. Someone could touch it with their fingertip and nothing happens. Pick it up, right? And then it comes to life and leaps out of your hand. And you have to make sure that if someone's reaching into this alcove, that it leaps out of their hand into the room and doesn't try to go to full size and crush the whole diorama. I mean, think about these details, right? Number B, letter B, this recess portrays natives farming. They're planting maize, which is corn, and harvesting wheat, which they never had in Mesoamerica, if I'm not mistaken. There are several, hey, but it's D&D and the Greyhawk. It's not exactly planet Earth. There are several warriors standing guard, and a priest in a bird costume is blessing the field. So you can see they have this AC 10 level 3 priest, and the spells are listed down below. Bless, cause light wounds, and spiritual hammer. So very offensive oriented. The next niche on the north wall still. So we've gone the first one, second one. Now we're doing the next one here. This one portrays a temple upon a tiered pyramid. Ironic, or coincidence, that's where you are, right? You're in this tiered pyramid down the bottom. Natives are bringing small offerings of gold and jade. Now that catches the attention of a lot of greedy players. Before the temple stands a priest handling a constrictor snake, like a boa constrictor. Around him stand 3 costumed warriors. One dressed as a winged serpent holds a spear. Another's dressed as a bear with razor claws. The third represents a coyote holding a torch. There are also several stone statues of the gods. So this is very interesting. This is the northeasternmost niche, the one closest to the door. And they talk about the 3 costume warriors. And then they talk about, let's see, where is it? A priest. So you have a priest and costume warriors. So they have warriors and priests here, but they don't talk about gods yet. So let's read on and see what else we got here. The offerings are worth 1 to 6 gold piece each, like a little tiny little tray with little gold in it. There are 24 of these items. The priest spells are curse, reverse of bless, darkness, and snake charm. So they don't talk about stone statues of the gods. That might be a neat way for you to add something scary to the adventure. However, if you're feeling really creative and you want to do your own thing and make this even cooler, like that would be something that most people go, oh, statues of gods, what does a god come alive and jump into the room? Maybe that happens. Maybe when you touch one of these stone statues of the gods, these ghostly spirit forms of these gods you have to make up, or you pull something from gods and demigods, comes alive in the room and tells them why they've been disturbed. And this world has just, give a backstory. Like, this temple is no longer in my favor, or are they talking about what happened in the distant past, or do you use it as a narrative element? That's really up to you. But technically, these things don't come alive. Only the normal people that are in the scenes do. Now we're going to D, E, and F. Now, D, E, and F are located over here. It's on the south wall. D is going to be in the far west, E in the middle, and then F to the southeastern corner. All right, let's see what we got for that. So D, the 4th niche holds a scene of tribal warfare. All the figures depict warriors carrying spears, clubs, hand axes, and daggers. The warriors of one side are painted black, while the other sides are done in red, but it doesn't say a many. Black warriors will do battle with red warriors and vice versa. But once they vanquish their foes, they will then turn on the player characters. That's really exciting. So you have the freedom here to say, it looks like there's a little battle. Imagine like a war game. Have you ever seen like a bolt action war game or a Hail Caesar war game? The British guys love wargaming. They have such beautiful, legendary wargaming tables. It's just that something about the United Kingdom just has that whole market cornered. Not to say there's not people in the States and New Zealand and other countries that do it, besides 40K being popular there. Why do I mention that? The number of warriors isn't described, and you're going to need to kind of put that in there. If you say it looks like the big skirmish battle between 13 warriors in red and 12 warriors in black, like you need to figure that out, right? Are any of them special? Do anyone look any different? Is someone like, how many warriors have daggers? Like, you're going to get a thief or someone asking these kind of questions thinking they can get something from it. You have to make that up, right? It's good to have your notes on the side to say, hey, listen, this is 10 on 10. It's just a PvP match, and keep it kind of simple. The 5th display is that a creation of the world. All the statuettes are stylized and obviously non-human. A god adorned in green, I can't pronounce this word. Is it Kasal? I'm not sure. Someone tell me how to pronounce it. I probably should look it up on the web, but I don't want to. This is a famous Mesoamerican god. Feathers is mixing ash with blood to form sculptures of a man and a woman. So it's like a creation story. 4 towering figures painted red, black, and blue and white are standing about a fire committing suicide with their daggers. That doesn't sound very nice. 2 smaller figures are ringed by the 4. The modest, pimply one is being consumed by the fire, while the braggart Lord of Snails cowers in fear. This is kind of interesting because it's sort of hinting at some things later on in the dungeon, but not clearly. So at this point, someone doesn't know what the hell you're talking about. If you call one a pimply one at the table or the Lord of Snails in quotation, you're going to draw attention to it. And it says none of these figures animate. So someone's going to do a lot of cautious, I want to try to touch, what's the pimply one really look like? You're going to get all those questions, right? And someone wants to know what the Lord of Snails looks like. Is it like a large god? Does he have like a shell on his back and crazy eye stalks? Like, you're going to need to make all that up to make it exciting, right? And then, like I talked about in the previous niche where there's warriors and number C, right? Are you going to have to make up what these characters look like? What's the purpose of them? People could spend 2 hours in this room with this kind of stuff if you make it too dramatic. Sometimes it's okay just to make things simple, right? Sometimes it's more, everything doesn't have to reveal a magical standard or magical result. But since you may have already broken the rules by saying picking up a figure, like I mentioned, as a suggestion, as opposed to placing on the floor, a lot of people could come in this room and just poke everything with their dagger and grab it and lift up a figure and set it back down, and nothing happens. Like, there's like no exciting drama happening at all. So you're going to have to really deal with this one, because this one's very exciting. It has really learned how to say the word that I can't say properly. It has a lot of interesting things about it. It has words being called out. That's scary business. So as a DM, that's where you get yourself in trouble, and your players will know, like, oh, you're making up crap on the spot. So you're going to have to spend a few minutes and get a 3x5 card or have a piece of paper. And so for niche E, you're going to need to come up with something. And also, you can start to see as you read through this that there's a lot of neat opportunities here for story or narrative or history. One thing they did in Diablo 3 and they did in Diablo 4, and we were going to do in the last Doom game, but it never happened, is having these like after images, like ghosts in the past recreating a scene where someone's died. They even did World of Warcraft. You can make these shimmering images appear and tell a story where the two characters are talking to each other and they're fading from view, like you've disturbed some kind of warp in time or something. That's up to you. A little science fiction-y, but it might be disappointing for people to come and see all this and see some of these really interesting named figures and have nothing happen, right? Which is basically what the module says. Nothing happens. The last one, the 6th hollow, shows native men. It means a niche. Men and women engaged in different crafts: weaving rugs, baskets, carving totems, making pots, grinding stones for weapons, and making clothes. So right away, this is really associating itself with Mesoamerican culture, this Olman, not Olmec, Olman culture. It's the same way you think of that now. When you think of the Maya, or you think of some of the cities in Mexico, or some of the stuff related to the Aztecs, which came later, anything before the Christian colonization of the New World, which changed everything. And I'm not even going to comment on that. You know what I think about that. It's just part of history, right? Happened all over the place. You're basically saying this is an archaic, prehistoric culture. The culture of Greyhawk has knights and fiefdoms and plate mail, right? This is carving pots, weaving rugs and baskets, living off the land, and raising maize. So you may want to think about, is this interesting or not? Okay. The cave-in appears to be completely blocked. The west end of the chamber, remember the map's turned on its side. We're going to pop that up again for you right here. This is the cave-in. That's what they're mentioning right here. At short intervals, small amounts of rubble and dirt come spilling into the room. Several large stones appear to have wedged themselves tightly, closing the collapse. I wouldn't do this. This is drawing attention for someone to turn around and go back and monkey with the cave-in. I think it's better to have, like, the ground gives way and there's a cave-in, but you slide and fall down pretty far, and it's maybe like 40 feet down, and you maybe bust your ankle, but you're okay if you rest for a while. So you need some kind of way to climb up there, like a thief would climb up there, and maybe put a grappling hook or rope and let people climb out. And that's their way they escape from the dungeon for a while, to rest in the forest. But in the forest, you can have all kinds of wild animals or dinosaurs or anything else you want to have constantly hassle the crap out of them. So there's no town to go sell things to nearby. If the players try to go back to the Hold of the Sea Princesses, it would take a month and a half. And by the time they come in, this whole thing could be covered back up and everything would be repopulated. Like, who knows, right? So I suggest you allow the players to come out of the dungeon or use this room to rest in. The gas and the vapor in the air it makes it hard to sleep. You could make them go back out, get in the jungle in the fresh air under the stars. The time of day could have changed. If you've ever been to a casino, they don't want you to go outside. You're in the casino at 10 o'clock at night and you come out and the sun's coming up. You're like, good Lord, I was in a casino all night long. If you've ever done that, you know what I'm talking about. So losing track of the time of day could be very interesting. I would never have Olman warriors attack the party for trespassing on the temple. It should just be completely overrun and wild. All right. So the reason why I mention all this junk is the digging, and that someone messes with it and they're going to get collapsed on and take 3 to 12 points of damage. I never liked that stuff. If you tell someone that something happens in a modern day, we're much smarter players now than we were in 1977 and 79. They think that's a cue or call to action. They think that's a cue for you to tell someone to go and, oh, this is doing something. Let me go use my player smarts and figure all that crap out. You don't necessarily want to do that. Now, let's go to the door, which is on the eastmost wall the whole time, right? One of the very first things people do is check out the door. The door is smooth and appears to open into the room, so it swings in, right? That means it has hinges. They're on the other side. There's scratches on the floor. There's no visible lock or handle, although across the top of the door, there's a slight gap. Okay, 8 holes seem to have been bored into the door. They're about 1 inch in diameter. A 1 inch diameter hole is about the diameter of a broom. Okay, just to give you a sense of that. But nothing can be seen. So if you peek in the hole, you don't see anything. It's all black. The door seems to be fairly thick. The lintel, which is the stone piece that spans over the doorway, is arched, and there's a keystone at the top, which is unusual because if you have a lintel, you don't need a keystone. A keystone is something from Roman arches where you have a half circle and all the pressure and the compression is on one chamfered piece at the top. You probably have seen this if you know anything about architecture. The language here is not exactly right. Okay. The door, here, let's read this carefully. The door is only an obstacle in tournament play, and if the door has swung shut while the party was investigating the room, well, it's going to be closed when you get in there anyway. The door may be opened a number of ways. Either the key found on the diorama of hunting may be used to spring the door open when turned in the keyhole hidden in the keystone over the door, which seems unlikely, right? Or spikes or similar tools may be driven into the door to provide handles, allowing a normal chance of the open door. I like that. I think that's great. Objects inserted into the holes already bored will simply pull it out. Driving spikes into the door will be difficult if the door is made of stone. The hinge pins may be broken and removed, but the door will fall inward, causing damage to anyone beneath it. This is kind of weak, in my opinion. Who am I to say it's weak, right? These things are classic adventures done in the old days. What I suggest you do, when you describe the door to someone and it has holes in it, how come there's no like reliefs or paintings or frescoes? Is there anything about paintings and frescoes on the door, right, that can be tie into the storyline that's in the niches? So could someone go and look at the niches and see this creation story, and then come look at the door, and put 2 and 2 together, and find out that if you take the crook, which you can make it silver or a different color, and if you put it in this hole and turn it, and this hole and turn it, and this hole and turn it in this order, the door goes clunk and opens automatically and swings open, a bunch of dust and all this cool stuff. Now, that's the kind of dramatic thing I think you should try to do, okay? So that is this very first room. If you want to get into really dirty detail, I made a detailed video of this years ago, 5 years ago. I'll put the link in the description, which has my miniatures and has the camera and talks about all the stuff in detail. I'm burning through it really, really, really fast here. But this is the kind of detail we want to do with the Hidden Shrine of Tamoachan. So this is just the very first area and the introduction. What we'll do in the next video is we'll go to area 2, area 3, area 4, and so on. We'll see how we go. It depends how much time it takes to cover each area. All right, now let's summarize real quickly. So I hope at this point you're thinking to yourself, wow, room 1 has a lot of opportunities for me as a DM to do neat things. I do think that lore is important. I think that the sense of mystery of trying to figure out an ancient civilization is the little boy in a lot of us wants to be an archaeologist, right? Don't forget the cool stuff that happens here later on in the dungeon, because it kind of is gone. Like, you have other rooms in the dungeon where they have dioramas and stuff like that, but in this one, they don't really talk about it too much. They show some modeled areas, but things start to get kind of strange with like the crab and all that. So don't forget that when you're describing some of the rooms later on, to think whatever you decided to do to really bring the colors and the frescoes and things to life, that you do that throughout the whole tomb, right? Because really what it is, it's a shrine of Tamoachan. It really was built as a temple or as a tomb. It wouldn't have all these different maze-like rooms. They used to have a purpose before they became overrun by creatures and monsters and the Bat God. So that's one thing I think you should, a great opportunity. So whatever theme you decide to do, however you want to handle these different types of creative opportunities, make sure you say to yourself, okay, well, am I going to have that in the Hall of Thrashing Canes? How am I going to do that? Which is area 2 here with the trap. How am I going to handle this in this? How can I make room 7 feel cooler than it's described? And we're going to do those rooms next. We'll probably go to room 2 and 3, 5, 6, and 7. I think I can squeeze those in the next video. I don't want them to get too long, kind of keep them 30, 35 minutes. Okay, great. We'll see you again next time. Tune in, give your suggestions, your ideas, whatever you think. What did you do? Because the Hidden Shrine of Tamoachan is one of my all-time favorites because it's historical connectivity to relatable themes that we all know and grew up with. All right, cool. We'll see you in the next video. Have fun, and we'll talk to you later.